Welcome to True Crime Chronicles. I'm Jessica Bell, and today we're delving into one of history's most chilling, unsolved mysteries. In the fog-shrouded streets of Victorian London, a killer emerged who would become the very definition of terror: Jack the Ripper. A murderer whose identity has eluded detection for over a century, and whose brutal crimes continue to captivate and horrify to this day. Join me as we walk through the dark alleys of Whitechapel and uncover the story of the world's most infamous serial killer. The terror began in the early hours of August 31st, 1888, when the body of Mary Ann Nichols was discovered in Bucks Row, Whitechapel. She was the first of what would become known as the Canonical Five, women whose murders would send shockwaves through Victorian London. The victims were all prostitutes, struggling to survive in the impoverished East End. Within just a few months, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly would meet similarly horrific fates. Each murder grew more savage than the last, with the killer displaying an alarming knowledge of anatomy. The bodies were found with their throats cut and organs removed with surgical precision, suggesting someone with medical training. The streets of Whitechapel, already dangerous and poverty-stricken, became paralyzed with fear. Women walked in groups, clutching makeshift weapons for protection. The fog-filled nights that once concealed illicit transactions now held the terrifying possibility of a chance encounter with a murderer who seemed to materialize and vanish like a phantom. The Metropolitan Police found themselves overwhelmed by the complexity of the case. Detective Inspector Frederick Aberline led the investigation, working tirelessly through countless leads and false confessions. But with each passing day, the killer seemed to grow bolder, taunting both the police and the public. On September 27th, the Central News Agency received what would become the most infamous piece of evidence: the Dear Boss letter. Written in red ink, the letter mocked the police's inability to catch him and promised more murders to come. Most chillingly, it was signed Jack the Ripper, a name that would become legendary in the annals of crime history. Though initially dismissed as a hoax, the letter's predictions of future murders proved horrifyingly accurate. Eyewitnesses provided conflicting accounts of a suspicious man seen with the victims. Some described him as tall and genteel, others as short and working class. A witness named Israel Schwartz claimed to have seen Elizabeth Stride with her attacker, while PC Edward Watkins reported crossing paths with a well-dressed man carrying a small black bag on the night of Catherine Eddowes' murder. But in the poorly lit streets of Victorian London, these sightings led nowhere. The police conducted door-to-door interviews, examined thousands of letters claiming to be from the killer, and even employed bloodhounds in their desperate search. But despite mounting public pressure and the assistance of Scotland Yard's best detectives, the Ripper remained elusive, seeming to vanish into the labyrinthine streets of the East End after each brutal crime. Over the years, more than 100 suspects have been proposed as the true identity of Jack the Ripper. Each theory seems to fit certain aspects of the crimes, while leaving other questions frustratingly unanswered. The surgical precision of the murders led many to believe the killer had medical training, focusing suspicion on physicians and surgeons in the area. One of the most compelling medical suspects was Dr. Thomas Neil Cream, who had a history of killing women with poison. However, he was reportedly in prison during the Whitechapel murders. Another doctor, Sir William Gull, Queen Victoria's physician, became a suspect due to his surgical expertise and royal connections, though most historians now dismiss this theory as sensational speculation. The butcher theory gained traction because of the killer's obvious skill with a knife and intimate knowledge of human anatomy. James Hardiman, a local butcher who worked in Whitechapel, drew attention for his violent temperament and access to sharp implements. Yet, like many suspects, the evidence against him remained purely circumstantial. Perhaps the most controversial theory implicated Prince Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria. Supporters of this theory suggested the murders were part of a conspiracy to cover up a royal scandal. The prince's documented absences from London during several of the murders eventually ruled him out, but the royal connection captured public imagination and refuses to die. Montague John Druitt, a barrister-turned-teacher, became a prime suspect when his body was found in the Thames shortly after the final murder. His own family suspected him of sexual insanity, and his suicide coincided with the end of the killing spree. Yet modern researchers have found little evidence linking him directly to the crimes. Among the working-class suspects, Polish barber Aaron Kosminski drew serious police attention. He lived in Whitechapel, suffered from mental illness, and harbored a deep hatred of women. Contemporary police officials considered him a strong suspect, but like so many others, concrete proof of his guilt remained elusive. In recent decades, forensic experts and researchers have applied cutting-edge technology to the Ripper case, hoping to unlock its secrets. DNA analysis has been attempted on several pieces of evidence, including the infamous From Hell letter and its accompanying kidney, supposedly taken from victim Catherine Eddowes. While these tests have yielded some results, the age and contamination of the evidence make definitive conclusions impossible. Geographic profiling, a technique that analyzes crime locations to determine a killer's likely base of operations, has revealed interesting patterns. When applied to the Ripper murders, it suggests the killer lived in the heart of Whitechapel, supporting some historical records. However, in a neighborhood as densely populated as Victorian Whitechapel, this information alone cannot identify our mystery killer. Modern criminal psychologists have developed detailed profiles of the Ripper, suggesting he was likely a local man in his 30s, possibly with medical knowledge or butchering experience. They believe he would have appeared normal and trustworthy to his victims, explaining why they went with him willingly. Yet these profiles, while valuable for understanding the killer's psychology, cannot definitively name him. The most promising recent development came from mitochondrial DNA testing on a shawl allegedly belonging to Catherine Eddowes. Some researchers claimed this evidence pointed to Aaron Kosminski, but critics quickly highlighted issues with the chain of custody and possible contamination. Like so many breakthroughs in this case, it raised as many questions as it answered. Despite all our technological advances, the Ripper's true identity remains tantalizingly out of reach. The passage of time, the degradation of evidence, and the limitations of Victorian-era police work continue to frustrate modern investigators. Perhaps the final answer lies not in a laboratory, but in some forgotten document or overlooked detail in the historical record. Over 130 years have passed since Jack the Ripper terrorized the streets of Whitechapel, yet his shadow still looms large over our collective imagination. The case has become more than just an unsolved crime. It's evolved into a cultural phenomenon that has shaped how we view and investigate serial killers. The Ripper case marked a pivotal moment in criminal investigation history. It was one of the first times that detailed crime scene photographs were taken, witness statements were extensively documented, and medical evidence was meticulously recorded. These innovations in police work, born from desperation to catch the killer, laid the groundwork for modern forensic investigation. The lasting mystery has spawned countless books, films, and theories, each attempting to unmask the notorious killer. From Prince Albert Victor to H.H. Holmes, from Lewis Carroll to a humble barber, the list of suspected Rippers continues to grow. But perhaps the truest legacy of Jack the Ripper isn't in his identity, but in how his crimes changed society's understanding of serial killers and the dark capabilities that can lurk behind seemingly normal facades. Today, the cobblestone streets of Whitechapel tell a different story. Tourist groups gather for Jack the Ripper walks, while scholars continue poring over Victorian documents, hoping to find that one crucial piece of evidence that has eluded generations of investigators. The case remains unsolved, but its impact on criminal investigation, forensic science, and our fascination with true crime endures, making it perhaps the most influential unsolved mystery in history. Thank you for joining me on another chilling episode of True Crime Chronicles. The mystery of Jack the Ripper continues to captivate and mystify us, proving that some shadows from the past never truly fade. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to True Crime Chronicles wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and share your thoughts about the Ripper case on our social media. Until next time, I'm Jessica Bell, reminding you that sometimes the most haunting mysteries are the ones that remain unsolved.